Hey guys, Dr. Bodle here, and something that I run into a lot with many of my patients is they think that stress is an emotional part of their health, not a physical part. The truth is, stress affects both. And in today's video, we're going to talk about all the ways that stress can impact our health, specifically looking at how it can impact our nutrition and reactions to food. We'll also talk about why we need to work on being more resilient to stress. And we'll finish off the video by talking about the areas that you should focus on and different strategies you can use to help you improve. So if that sounds like a plan, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell for new videos every Thursday. And if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, stick with me until the end of the video. That way you can learn about how to get that process started. Now, as I said at the top of the video, a common misconception about stress is that it's only emotional. Another common misconception is that it's always bad, and neither of these are true. Stress is anything that pushes our system, and anytime our system gets pushed, there is a very real neurological and hormonal response. Some people can take a lot of stress, and other people can take hardly any. But the key is tracking whether or not you have a change in symptoms or function when stress presents itself. If you do notice changes, then this is referred to a loss of stress resiliency and tolerance. And it's identified by our body's inability to maintain homeostasis when there's an increase in stress. When we lose our tolerance, the impact of stress can be wide-ranging, and it can promote things like immune system dysfunction and autoimmunity, whether that's the perpetuation of a current autoimmune condition or the development of additional ones. It can also have a direct impact on thyroid pathways, either by changing TSH output from the brain or impairing the conversion of T4 into T3. It can also disrupt sex hormone function by decreasing stimulating hormone release from the brain or by downregulating hormonal production at the glands themselves. And finally, stress can interrupt our digestive process by increasing our sympathetic nervous system activity and therefore decreasing the amount of digestive enzymes and the motility in our gut, but also by having a direct impact on breaking down the junctions in our intestines, leading to leaky gut and intestinal permeability, and by changing the composition of our microbiome. When the breakdown of these systems starts to occur, the symptoms can also be fairly varied, but common presentations that we often see can include things like gastric burning or bloating, increases in fatigue and exhaustion and loss of endurance, changes in immune function, whether that leads to an increase in autoimmunity or decreased capacity to deal with pathogens, promotion of unstable blood sugar and dysglycemia, sleep disturbances, changes in weight either gaining or losing, and also an increase in general pain, whether that's body pain or headaches and migraines. But let's loop back around and focus in on the changes in digestion and some of those associated symptoms. Our bodies tend to be more reactive to foods that have complex food particles that are difficult for us to break down. By the time food starts to move through our small intestine, it should mostly be broken down into small subunits that are easy for our body to interact with and absorb. However, if those food complexes haven't been broken down, or if we've lost integrity in our gut barrier and we're absorbing some of those particles into our bloodstream before our body is ready, then it's going to prompt a response from our immune system because essentially something has snuck past our security. The last thing that our body wants is a very complex protein getting into the system because the high likelihood is that complex proteins are representative of different types of infections, whether bacteria, viruses, or otherwise. Food, on the other hand, should be processed appropriately. That way we don't confuse it with something like a virus. But if there's enough stress in our life and our body has lost its resiliency, then we can have a situation where those proper digestive steps don't take place and our gut is more sensitive in general. The reason this can be such a problem for people with Hashimoto's is because if we don't have the capacity to break down our food, then we have the potential to elicit an immune response every time we eat. This can be a big piece of driving that continued autoimmunity. And when we look at it in combination with all the other things going on in your life, not only will it promote symptoms, but it will prevent healing and recovery. But here's the thing that I see so many people run into. Now, for most of you, you've come to a point where you recognize the impact that nutrition can have on your health. That leads us to trying different nutritional approaches and strategies. And oftentimes, we recognize that there are certain foods that just don't work well for us. Maybe by removing certain foods, you start to see a reduction in inflammation, and some of your symptoms start to improve. This can be super encouraging and exciting, especially when a lot of the standard approaches don't work for a lot of people. But although dietary modifications and certain specific restrictions can be great, and if you've watched any of my stuff, you know that I think that's a huge part of what we can do and leverage to help you improve your health, it can also lead us into a little bit of a trap. We think, well, shoot, if taking out one thing was helpful, well, maybe I should continue down that path and take out more. It's a logical extension of that, right? So if you're still having symptoms, then the strategy becomes let's take out more things. And anytime there's a flare up in symptoms, you're going back and you're combing over everything you've eaten over the past few days, trying to identify which food was the culprit. Was it the oil the food was cooked in? Was there indirect contact with gluten? Maybe not all the ingredients were listed on a particular food product. There can be so many variables, it can be really tough to know, and it's enough to drive anyone crazy. But at the same time, everything up until this point has indicated to you that that's probably where the problem is coming from. And the better that you can identify it, then that allows you to actually do something about it. So you continue to do your best, and you continue to remove those most likely culprits. But eventually you get to the point where your diet is severely restricted, you're continuing to have symptoms, and there's really nothing left for you to eliminate. So here's the truth that can be a little scary for some people, especially when you had that success in the beginning. And that is, in certain scenarios, although changing our nutrition can be helpful, it's the stress that is the main driver of symptoms in the first place. Because of the stress in your life, you've disrupted your gut health, made your system more sensitive, and as a result, even potentially healthy foods for you aren't broken down and processed appropriately, which then leads to a large amount of foods that can potentially be an irritant and inflammatory to your system. And although removing certain specific foods can be very helpful, if we don't address the main driver of the gut dysfunction, then we're never going to make improvement, and your lack of nutritional diversity is going to harm you in the long run. Now, just because I know I'm going to get asked about this, there are certain situations where using some of these more specialized diets for the long term can be appropriate. And I've leveraged those for certain patients in my clinic. But without going too deep into the topic today, the key there would be noticing an improvement in your symptoms and function rather than having your symptoms worsen or continue to be persistent. No matter what our nutritional strategy is, when we make changes, we want to see the body respond in a favorable manner. But if you are feeling stuck with your symptoms and you think that stress might be the cause, how do we identify that? And what sort of strategies can we use? Well, just like I have a lot of my patients do food tracking, that's not the only thing that they include on their daily journal. If it makes sense that tracking our food can allow us to identify particular offenders to our body, then it can also be helpful to track things like what were our stress levels on a particular day, how much exercise did we do, and how much sleep did we get. What did we say at the beginning of the video? We need to be aware of whether or not we're having symptoms when stress increases. And the best way to do that is to have a system in place where we can track our stress and see if that correlates with our symptoms. Once you've identified that connection, you then need to sit down and ask yourself, what stress in my life is under my control and what stress isn't? For the stress that is under your control, we need to look at ways where we can modify or change our behavior to reduce that stress. And for the stress that isn't under our control, we need to then do things that will help us to mitigate that stress and support our resiliency on the back end. While there can be a lot of ways to approach this, my keys for helping patients to improve their tolerance and resiliency revolves around three main things. And that includes fueling your body appropriately, making sure that you're getting consistent and restful sleep, and also exercising to tolerance. And this is why I also have these different areas included in a patient's journal. If we don't track it, then we're never going to know where we're at, and it's going to make it very difficult for us to change. Fueling our body is critical because stress has a huge impact on insulin response and blood sugar regulation. If our fuel levels are unstable and all over the place, then that will create an additional stressor on the system, which will then perpetuate many of these stress cycles. It's for that reason we want to make sure we're fueling in a way that stabilizes our fuel levels, even though we might have things going on in our life that are working against that. This is why I recommend people focus on a combination of nutrients that works well for their system and also has the most stabilizing and modulating effect. I like people to make sure that they're getting somewhere between 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight up to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Protein is something that is often neglected and has a huge positive impact on our blood sugar and fuel levels, and is also necessary for the promotion of recovery. I also like to make sure that people are getting plenty of healthy, unprocessed fats, and they're including higher fiber vegetables and fruits if their body tolerates it. When it comes to sleep, this is a non-negotiable, no matter what you're working on in your health, but especially if you're trying to manage your stress. Make sure you have a set schedule where your time to go to sleep and your time to wake up are consistent for you throughout the week. Practice good sleep hygiene, like removing all electronics for the hour prior to going to sleep. Don't skip any meals throughout the day. And if you're someone who historically has higher blood sugar levels on their labs, then you may want to consider fasting for 3 to 4 hours after your last meal and before you go to sleep. And if you're someone who has lower blood sugar levels, then it can be a good idea to have a small snack about 30 minutes before you go to sleep. And usually choosing something that is rich in protein or fat can be a good way to go. Of course, make sure to rule out any pathological or physical impediments to sleep, such as things like sleep apnea, as they can completely impair sleep quality no matter how many good habits you put in place. Finally, when it comes to exercise, and I talk about this all the time, but tolerance is key. Does more vigorous exercise elicit more of a response from our body and potentially lead to better outcomes? Yes, but that's in healthy situations. And the important word to note there is potentially. Not only can our body lose resiliency for stress, but it can also lose resiliency when it comes to exercise. And for a lot of people with Hashimoto's, they're combining a chronic condition with systemic inflammation, poor sleep, poor nutrient uptake, and then on top of all of that, they start to overtrain. Exercise should make you feel better, not worse. And if you're feeling symptomatic afterwards, or it's taking you multiple days to recover, then you're probably doing too much for your body. Your 3 levers here are frequency, duration, and intensity, and you'll likely want to turn down all 3 until you can exercise and not notice any adverse effects. For some people, that might be cutting their gym sessions from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. And for other people, it could mean taking a complete break from exercise for a period of a month. You have to give the system a chance to recover. Once you do that, you can slowly start to reincorporate exercise and build from there. Just because it's making us feel worse doesn't mean that we should ignore it. It's a critical and unique way to improve our health. And exercise provides us benefits that nutrition and supplementation just can't. So even though we've all been taught to think that more exercise is always better, in reality, doing less and doing what your body feels good about is going to likely make the biggest difference. So if you can work to reduce your exposure to negative stressors in your life, while at the same time employing some of these strategies that can improve your stress resilience, you likely won't notice a huge change right away, but week by week and month by month, that tolerance will start to return. And although it can feel like sometimes we need to continue to restrict, by addressing the stress in our life and understanding how it can be involved in all these different mechanisms, including the way that we respond to food, you can start to make real progress because you're taking a more holistic and comprehensive approach to your health. But as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know if you have any questions, and feel free to share if stress is something that has impacted your life and has contributed to some of your symptoms. If you like today's information, but you're still feeling stuck, you're not getting a lot of help from your doctor, and you want someone to take a more holistic approach, put the pieces together and provide you with a plan to start feeling better, then I'd recommend sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com. That way we can set up a free consultation and see if we would be a good fit to work one-on-one together. The consultations are always no pressure. It just provides us some time to sit down and talk about your health, figure out what your goals are, answer any questions you might have, and determine whether or not we're a good fit to work together. If I do think it can help you, I'll let you know, and then we can decide to move forward together. If you want to keep learning, but you're not ready for the consultation, then I'd recommend checking out some of the other videos on my YouTube channel, downloading either one of my free downloads listed in the description box, or following me on Instagram or Facebook for daily tips and strategies. But that's it for this one. Thank you for all the continued love, kindness, and support. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope that it continues to be valuable. If you did like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. But my name is Dr. Brad Bodle. I hope you have a great rest of your week and a fantastic end to your year, and I will see you in the next video.